To truly know the intent of a group or initiative, just look at who pulls the purse strings. The ranked choice voting and jungle primary ballot initiative, referred to as Proposition 1, is certainly no exception. It turns out that 3 out of every $5 raised by the organization shepherding the initiative, the so-called Idahoans for Open Primaries, comes from out-of-state donors. This strongly indicates a larger motive is at play than what is touted as grassroots election reform. So on this week's episode of Fiscal Fridays, we provide an outline for Proposition 1, who is funding it, and what these financial undercurrents could mean for Idahoans. Many of those who follow the Idaho Freedom Foundation are already aware of what Proposition 1 would entail, but if you're still unsure, here's a brief overview. Proposition 1, in title, definition, and purpose, is a two-subject initiative. The first part of the initiative requires some clarification. This section would implement a top 4 primary system. This is very similar to the system seen in California, where they have a top 2 primary system. This is called a jungle primary. Under this primary election system, all candidates from all parties go on the same ballot. Candidates may also associate with any party they choose without verification. The top 4 vote getters in the primary will move on to the general election. This is where the second part of the initiative comes into play. The initiative would implement a ranked choice voting system for the general election. Under this system, voters will cast votes for all candidates on the ballot in order of preference. This means Republicans must vote for some Democrats and the same vice versa. If none of the candidates receive more than 50% of all the votes cast, a computer algorithm redistributes the second choice votes from the candidate that received the least support on the first round to the other candidates. This process is repeated until someone receives more than 50% of the votes. In essence, this means the first loser's supporters get to vote multiple times, once for the first round and once for each successive round of recounting. This can mean that the candidate with the most votes doesn't always win. This confusing new system is heralded as being, quote, for Idahoans by Idahoans. But when you look into the funding, you find Proposition 1 was not really an organic product of the grassroots. A vast majority of the funding behind the initiative comes from left-wing organizations and out-of-state donors. Looking into the main group pushing the initiative, Idahoans for Open Primaries, reveals that 64% of all their funding comes from large out-of-state donors. This equates to just under $2 million. These funds don't exactly come from deep red territory either. Among those on the list include the left coast of California, western Washington state, and Washington, D.C. But the largest supporter of the initiative comes from Denver, Colorado in the Unite America PAC. A watchdog group known as Secure Idaho's Elections found that despite the fact that Unite America claims to be nonpartisan, they receive most of their funding from left-leaning donors. Secure Idaho Elections also found several other outlets supporting the initiative that are funded by socialist puppet master George Soros, are Washington, D.C. interest groups, or have a track record of advancing failed socialist programs. These groups include the likes of Reclaim Idaho, Fair Vote, Arabella Advisors, the 1630 Fund, and the Open Society Fund. All this considered, we are left with some questions. Why Prop 1, and why Idaho? As it turns out, this isn't just Idaho. These groups are pushing the same system of jungle primaries coupled with ranked choice voting in several western states, including Nevada, Arizona, Montana, Colorado, and South Dakota. This is after states like Alaska, Washington, and California all served as the test cases. Not everyone is satisfied with the system, however. Alaskans are attempting to return their elections to the old system after using jungle primaries and ranked choice voting for just one election year. Given the flow of leftist money into the gem state and the track record of how the system performed in the past, the goal seems to be to tip the scales, and not in the favor of the candidates championing free markets and small government. In sum, Proposition 1 is hardly a grassroots initiative. Large out-of-state donors seem to see Idaho not just as one place to make a leftward shift in state politics, but part of a larger picture across western states. As it turns out, when you follow the money, you often discover one's true motives and the corrupt forces pulling the strings. It seems that leftists know what they want when it comes to Idaho's elections. Thank you for watching this week's episode of Fiscal Fridays. Following the money reveals quite a lot. This is why we at the Idaho Freedom Foundation decided to pull back the curtain on government waste by producing the 2024 Pork Report. If you would like to read about how the government funds its priorities, be sure to sign up to receive your free copy at idahofreedom.org/24pork.